I think, the rest of the way. And I think that they're very capable of doing that. It's just been only in spurts that we've seen them play like they did yesterday. We've seen it only in spurts much throughout the season, little chunks of the game, but not the game coast to coast like it was yesterday. So going forward, I think this is the blueprint to come up with wins, and I think they're at a point in the season where they're really starting to click offensively, and they will be tough to handle with two great running backs, two great receivers, and a quarterback who's really starting to feel good about himself again.
Yeah, let's start there, Jimmy. I think Baker looks like the guy we remember from last year. Now, some of that looked like he had more time against the Dolphins to throw, I feel like, than he's had most of the year in terms of there wasn't a big pass rush coming at him. But he looks comfortable. He looks, he was using all his weapons. It just reminded you of what we saw last year that made the Browns offense so fun to watch.
Yeah, he really does, and he's really not turning the ball over anymore. I know he had the one deflection where he was a little late on the ball to Beckham, and it kind of glanced off him, and then it was intercepted. That's going to happen. I mean, he threw over 30 times in the game, and for most quarterbacks, if they throw over that number, someone's going to get one. But we're not seeing the 2 or 3 interception games that we saw earlier in the season. And he's making great throws. I think that the ball is going to the right person. He's become a little bit more, mobile in the pocket. Not only in the pocket, but outside the pocket, which is fun to watch. On the first drive of the game, I mean, he rolled to his right, and he kept rolling and rolling until Landry came up and saw that he needed help, and he made that throw. And it just seems as though he's very, very comfortable throwing the football again. His long ball was great to Beckham. He threw a couple of deeper balls to Landry. His slants, I mean, they are really humming. I mean, they come at you at a high rate of speed, and you have to be ready to catch those. Those are a little scary to me because he's in so much traffic when he throws those that if the receiver doesn't make the catch, and the example was what happened on the Beckham play, those can typically end up as an interception because they bounce up in the air and somebody gets their hands on them. But for the most part, I mean, I just think he looks really good. He looks exactly like you said. He looks like he did in the final 8 games of the season last year, and it's a great time for that to happen because I do believe that his confidence had taken a hit at that point in the season where they had lost 4 in a row.
And, the Browns, I think, still, if I have one complaint, I didn't have many complaints yesterday, but, and they were trying to, kind of finish the game off yesterday. Freddie forgot again that he's got 2 really good running backs to turn to, and maybe they threw it a little bit more than we would have wanted to at the end. But we saw yesterday again that the Chubb-Hunt dynamic they kind of unfolded a little bit more and showed us more of what they can be together.
They did, and I think that's the product of them being, on the field together, and I mean the practice field together. They had a little bit longer time now because they had played on a Thursday night, and then they had a longer practice week coming into the game yesterday. And that's good. I mean, it comes at a point where really this is early in Kareem Hunt's season. It's not for Nick Chubb, but it's early for Kareem Hunt to be doing it. And I think that's a product of just being together more. I still think, Dino, that they're only scratching the surface with what they can do with those guys. I liked what they did on the goal line where they ran 2 in, Chubb with a great run and Hunt with a speed run to the outside. I mean, that's really a good look. I still think that there are a lot of things that, are going on. I think, for instance, they show a lot of that jet sweep motion, and they do it with Kareem Hunt more than they do it with Chubb, where they bring him off a slot and they bring him back towards the line of scrimmage, and he kind of crisscrosses. And that has been a little sloppy so far. And it was sloppy, a couple of times, in the Buffalo game, and it was sloppy yesterday a couple of times where they're just not clicking on that. But I think they keep going to it because I think we're going to see it now in the upcoming weeks where they're going to run some misdirection, I think, with Hunt and with Chubb. And defenses are going to be wondering who's got the ball and where's it going to go when that running back takes off with it. So, I think it was good. I think you're right. There was a period in the game where the Browns allowed the Dolphins to get back in the game. There was the interception, and then the ball went in for a touchdown, and then there was the missed field goal, and the ball went in for a touchdown, and suddenly it's an 11-point lead from a 25-point halftime lead, and you got to do a little bit more work. And that's something that they're going to have to keep their eye on, because they'll be playing better teams now other than the Bengals the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, 5 games to go. They'll have, and it's funny, it's 5 games to go, 4 of them in the division. I mean, they're going to see everybody here with Arizona kind of mixed in here, Jimmy. It's in terms of familiarity, it's going to be there for them. They'll know who they're playing. I mean, Arizona's kind of the outlier, but no surprises here to finish this thing off.
No, not at all. And certainly it begins this week with just a huge game. I mean, that's a knockout game for both teams. You lose that game, you're probably out of it. And definitely for the Browns. I mean, if they lose that game Sunday in Pittsburgh, I think that does it as far as the playoff chase. I think for Pittsburgh, if they lose the game, it's critical. And I think the state of the Steelers right now is very, very much up in the air. I mean, I don't know what we're going to see in the way of quarterback for the Steelers after they made a quarterback change yesterday. But I will say this. I don't remember going over to Pittsburgh at any time since the Browns have come back in 1999. I don't remember going over there with a team that really goes into the game better than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, I think the Browns are a better football team right now, than the Pittsburgh Steelers are. And that goes because the Steelers have an uneasy situation at quarterback between Mason Rudolph laying an egg in Cincinnati yesterday, and then Devlin Hodges having to come in and kind of rescue the game and win the game, and Roethlisberger being over on the sideline and no chance of him coming in and playing, and James Conner being banged up, Juju Smith-Schuster being banged up, and I just think that the Browns go over there right now, and they're a better football team than the Steelers. Now, they have to, of course, go out on the field and do it, but I think that right now the Browns are a handful for any team that's going to go up against them. I think the Browns are sturging, whereas some teams are just trying to survive.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go back. I mean, probably, 87, 88, maybe 89 in the Three Rivers days to find when you could say, boy, the Browns, top to bottom, offense, defense, personnel, everything, better football team. I mean, it's really been you're right, it's been a long time. And but now you got to. That's all well and good, as you say all the time. You got to go win the game, though.
Yeah, you really do, and it's such a difficult place to win. Even if you go in there and you're a better team. I mean, other teams have gone in there. The Ravens have gone in there a number of times, and near the end of the season, right at this point of the season, where a division title is up for grabs, and Baltimore has gone in with some of those great defenses that they've had, and they've been a better team than the Steelers, and yet Pittsburgh would come back in a game and they would win the ball game, and it would throw the division up for grabs, and and then usually the Steelers would come out and win the division at that point in time. But again, a lot of that was with guys like Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and those kind of players, and they don't have that type of player right now, even if they were completely healthy, other than Roethlisberger. But he's the key. But there will be a point in time where you'll go over there, no matter what the state of the Steelers is going into the game on Sunday. Anytime you go over there, Dino, there is a point of the game where even if you are playing well and the scoreboard is in your favor, you will be challenged at Heinz Field. The Steelers will take a run at you. And it's how you handle that moment. If you go back to that playoff game, the only time the Browns have been in the playoffs since coming back, they were in total control of that game. Yes. They had a double-digit lead in the ball game. Everything's going well. And all of a sudden, Kelly Holcomb threw an interception where they were driving for a touchdown to put the game absolutely out of reach. I think Deshae Townsend might have picked it off. And it just looked like a turnover, but then it just escalated, and it kept going and going. And suddenly it was a mountain of momentum instead of just a little molehill of momentum. And the Browns were not able to answer that. And really, all it was going to take was a sack of Tommy Maddox, and the game might have been over at that point in time. Just get them down one time, but they couldn't do it. And then the Steelers just grew, and they became big-time Steelers again. And I think that's going to happen on Sunday, no matter how the game is going to go, whether it's early or whether it's in the third quarter going into the fourth quarter. I think the Browns, even if they're in good shape, they will be challenged by that team and that crowd. How they answer that, how quickly they answer it, I think will lend you kind of a good path to how that game's going to end.
I completely agree. Hey, I want to give some love to Joe Schobert again, Jimmy. I mean, 2 more interceptions. He's got 4 in the last 2 games. And at a time when the Browns defense is with injuries and obviously the Garrett suspension, they're really shorthanded. Guy who's been a Pro Bowler is playing like a Pro Bowler in Schobert.
He really is, and he does so much more than just on the particular plays. His pre-snap, his pre-snap authority of that defense, getting people lined up, and he had to do it a lot more yesterday because you had a lot more people who were coming in there that hadn't played before. I mean, he was lining safeties up. He was lining, he's always lining Mack Wilson up because he's a young player, and you want to get him in the right spot. So his authority and his responsibilities and how well he handles those 2 things pre-snap, before the opposition even snaps the football, is just amazing. He's a busy guy out there. And the amazing thing about him as the linebacker is how deep he can drop, away from the line of scrimmage. And that's where he's coming up with these interceptions. He's well down the field. He's 15, 20 yards down the field, sometimes even a little bit deeper. I mean, they're not right at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he has dropped in coverage. And, I mean, that is just amazing how he's been able to do that. And the way he just continues to get better and better at it. I mean, he's like a coach out on the field anyway, but he's definitely a great player out on the field. And I don't know, he definitely doesn't get enough love. You're right. He doesn't get enough love here in Cleveland, and he doesn't get enough love around the league. I mean, he's just an average Joe to everybody else. But when you watch him play, he is usually right where the ball is. And he's not only coming up with interceptions, but he breaks passes up. He's in the middle on stuff on the run. I mean, he's just doing everything at an incredibly high level. And as you mentioned, at a point where they really need it because they were missing so many pieces to the regular defense yesterday.
And lastly, with all the the off the field stuff and everything that's happened, last 3 weeks, but certainly over the last 10 days, I think Freddie Kitchens deserves some credit. I mean, he kept this team focused. And again, the Dolphins are the Dolphins, but I mean, we've seen teams in the past, look ahead to, past an opponent they should beat and start thinking about playing their rival or whatever and lose and see their playoff fortunes die. That didn't happen. And I mean, I think a tip of the cap to the head coach for what he's done here lately and certainly in this winning streak.
Yeah, I think Dino, I think you have to go back to the Buffalo game and how everything was really hanging by a thread there. I mean, you're looking at a very, very real possibility of going 2-7, and we would know the state of the Browns was very fragile at that point in time for the coach, for the quarterback, for the 2 star receivers. The only 2 guys everybody was really pleased with at the time had to be Nick Chubb and probably Schobert, because remember, Denzel Ward hadn't been playing in a while, Greedy Williams hadn't played, but I think we were very underwhelmed by Olivier Vernon, and for that matter, by Myles Garrett at that point. I mean, I know he had a high sack number, but play to play, I mean, there were times when Myles was a little bit invisible in games. But if you go back to a moment and how critical this particular moment was, if you remember that shovel pass against the Buffalo Bills, when the Browns were losing, but they were on their last drive of what was regulation time, and there was that shovel pass that at first was ruled a fumble, and Jerry Hughes picked it up for Buffalo and ran it in for a touchdown, and that game was over if the initial call stood that it was a fumble recovered by Buffalo for a scoop and score a touchdown. That game was over, and the Browns' season was over, and I think people's jobs might have been over at that point in time, or definitely at the end of the year. But on replay, it was called an incomplete pass. The Browns then took that and went in for the touchdown, won the game. And really, I'm telling you, sometimes seasons come down to one critical moment. And at least right now, from my vantage point, I look back on that moment and say the Browns' season was saved.
Yeah, I mean, I know how I felt when that play happened. It's like, I mean, like everything you said. Job's gone, season over. Oh no, we're gonna have 3 months of talking about the draft, and just like that, in a New York minute, everything changed, and we're talking about a team that's surging. It's amazing, right?
Yeah, it really is, and I think that's the moment that you have to say, the Cleveland Browns saved their season. Maybe Freddie Kitchens saved at least, the good feeling or the optimistic feeling that he was a first-year head coach and he'd coach his way out of this thing. And I think he has since then. I think the team has played really well against Pittsburgh. I mean, the thing is, you cannot undersell the effort in the Pittsburgh game because of the last 8 seconds of the game when the brawl broke out. And, really too much has happened there where we don't talk about the performance of the Browns. We talk about the fight more than the brilliant play of the Browns, for 59 minutes of the football game. I mean, really. And I think yesterday, it was a very strong football team that went in and knew they had business to take care of, and they took care of their business. I mean, that's how you do it. It's like when the Indians would play the Tigers last year. You just go in, you beat the Tigers. You go in yesterday, you beat the Dolphins, and now you move on. And this is a big challenge on Sunday. It is a week where they're going to really have to preach that they're going to have to, play the game rather than go out and really, be provocative in the game. I mean, Freddie's message is always play the play. And I think they definitely have to go out and do that. I mean, he has to hammer that into them on Sunday, that they have to be able to go out and just play the football game, play the situation. Don't play the after the whistle stuff at all, because that is going to be there. And I think that, you could easily be drawn in to a ton of penalties, and I think the game's going to be officiated very, very tightly anyway. So they have to go out and just play their game, and it's got to be play to play and stay within themselves on Sunday, and don't get wrapped up in that stuff, because that stuff is what will lead you to a bad bus ride home.
Yep, mental toughness indeed. Jimmy, as always, we appreciate it, my friend. We'll look forward to seeing you later on this evening on What Matters Most, and then at 7 on the Front Row.
All right, Dino, thanks.
All right, that's Jim Donovan, the voice of the Browns, and 3 News sports anchor, reacting to the Browns beating the Dolphins 41-24 on Sunday. They've won 3 straight. They're now 5-6, and a couple things to take away, I think, from what Jimmy said. We'll get Matt Florjancic up here in a couple of minutes, and we'll talk more about some of those points and more here in a few minutes. But a couple things to take away. I think first and foremost, Jimmy's right on. That sequence against Buffalo, if this thing goes the way we hope it goes, and the Browns make a playoff run, we're going to look back at that moment in against Buffalo and say, how close it came to being a loss. I think, though, the point being, this is going to be with the Steelers on Sunday. It's going to be tightly officiated. It's going to be tightly watched. The Browns have to have mental toughness. They cannot allow themselves to get suckered in to any of the extracurricular stuff that they got suckered into at the end of that game 10 days ago or whatever against Mason Rudolph and company at First Energy Stadium. If they can just go in there and let our personnel be better than your personnel, which is what we found out the first time the two teams played, the Browns can go and they can win that game. But there's going to be a point when something happens, the Steelers get a turnover, they get that crowd fired up into it, something happens to give them life. And it's how the Browns respond to that could help define the rest of this season. If they waver under it, then that's going to be the point when we're saying, yeah, it's over. But when they rise above it, that's going to be the point when you say, oh, man, 4 games to go. We're 6-6. We're still undefeated in our division. We've got 2 with Cincinnati, 1 with Baltimore and 1 with Arizona. We got this. Let's go. It's all out there for them. It's still a lot out there for them. But they're going to have to really, really be focused on Sunday at Heinz Field. Okay, on Twitter, we posted a question and also retweeted it at WKYC and at Dino Cleveland. Today's After Further Review Twitter poll: who gets the game ball from Sunday's Browns win over Miami? Is it Jarvis Landry? Is it Baker Mayfield? Is it Nick Chubb or Joe Schobert? Already 200 of you have voted in. Jarvis Landry getting 64% of the vote. Baker Mayfield at 15%. Joe Schobert 14%. And Nick Chubb is at 7%. Matt Florjancic, 3 News digital sports reporter, joining me. He was at First Energy Stadium yesterday to take in the action. And what was the biggest takeaway for you from a game the Browns had to win against an inferior team? They put 28 points on the board early, and then kind of had to, it was a little bit dicey just for a few moments, and then they kind of finished it off nicely.
They needed a performance like they had in the first half, where they came out and everything was clicking, everything was looking good, and especially coming off of the craziness that was the last 10 days after the Steeler game and the brawl that ensued. They needed to come out and show that they were focused, that there were no lulls, and that they were able to get the job done. And they were, for all intents and purposes, able to do that. And starting with a 28-0 lead is a great way to start a ball game. I mean, they went into halftime pretty much rolling, minus the field goal drive that the Dolphins had at the end of the half. I mean, that was all Browns, and then in the third quarter, the lull came for the offense. But the good sign with that is they snapped out of it.
Right.
It wasn't something that lasted the whole rest of the game. They were able to say, okay, let's put that behind us and let's start building drives. And they ended up building 3 scoring drives, 2 field goals and a touchdown to help seal the win.
You know, the thing that you love is, you know, the 41 points were put on the board, but I mean, Jarvis Landry had 2 touchdowns. Chubb had 1. Hunt had 1. Beckham had 1. This is what we thought I think we were going to see when this offense was put together. This Frankenstein offense was kind of put together by John Dorsey. This is what we thought we were going to see.
All the key contributors that we thought were going to be playmakers down the stretch for hopefully a playoff run made plays yesterday. Everybody worked in tandem with each other. They worked off the run game. They worked off the pass game. They did a good job to be balanced. I would have liked to seen a few more runs.
Me too.
But I think at this point, I'm just going to have to live with the fact that that's not going to happen. That's not the MO of the play caller. But they found a way to make it work regardless of whether they were running or passing. And I think ultimately you chalk this one up as probably the most complete offensive performance that they've had this year.
And to me, it starts with the quarterback. And number one, the offensive line gave him time to throw. And you could say, well, Miami doesn't have a great pass rush, this, that, and the other thing. But Baker, as I was watching yesterday, Baker had time to look deep on some throws and to just, instead of just doing the little RPOs and the quick hitters, he had some more time, and he was able to look downfield a little bit more. The throws are more accurate, save for the interception. The throws are on point, and he's got some of that on-field swagger back that we saw last year in those last 8 games.
Yeah, he's looking more like the Baker that we saw down the stretch last season, that can shrug off a mistake and just go on to the next play. It's not compounding itself. And at this point in the year, the Browns can't afford to have anything less than what Baker showed yesterday. They have to have a poised Baker Mayfield that does have a little bit of swagger to him on the field, is able to make those difficult throws. He made one along the sideline yesterday that was unbelievable. First of all, it was a heck of a throw, and secondly, it was a great catch. I believe it was Jarvis Landry who pulled it down before falling into the Browns sideline. Just a tremendous game by him. He really set a good bar for the team moving forward by his performance yesterday, and we'll see what he's able to do in the coming weeks, especially this Sunday against the Steelers once again.
Yeah, Jimmy pointed out that, you know, might be the first time in 30 years.
Decades, yeah.
Where the Browns go into Pittsburgh as unquestionably the better team. Now, you could say, well, Pittsburgh has injuries. Well, of course, everybody has injuries. I mean, but they've got the better roster.
For so many years, though, the injury bug has bitten the Browns to the point where guys like Bruce Gradkowski have had to start games against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not taking anything away from Bruce. He was a good ball player, but he was signed on a Tuesday and was playing, not just playing, starting on Sunday.
Right.
So they've gotten fortunate with a lot of injuries,
did Daddy
too.
Lou play in Pittsburgh once at the end of a season?
He very well might have, yeah. Ben Axelrod just said 2012.
I thought.
I mean, it's been, going the other way for a long time. The Steelers can afford to deal with it once.
Yeah, exactly. But we know, and Jimmy brought up the example of the 2002 playoff game. There's always a time, where something goes against you in Pittsburgh. The Steelers make a big play, a penalty goes against you, a turnover, something happens, get that crowd fired up, and you've got adversity. And it's how you deal with that adversity that helps define whether or not you win the game and where you go forward on the season. And I think that's a big key for Sunday. It's how do you respond when the Steelers come at you?
I'm talking figuratively, not literally.
Yes.
But you need to take their best effort and you need to punch them back in the mouth. You need to respond. You need to fight through that adversity. It's not going to be easy. When you get to the playoffs, winning is not easy. So you have to find a way to win in tough atmospheres and tough environments. And if the Steelers get up on the Browns have to find a way to answer. The offense has to step up if the defense lets down, and vice versa. The defense has to step up and make plays if the offense is struggling. And most importantly, let's not leave it up to an Austin Seibert field goal into the open end of the stadium that nobody likes to kick into.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter who you are. You can be
Not even the Pittsburgh kickers actually like kicking in that end.
No, it's kind of like kicking towards the dog pound. I mean, it's right now, that's been like, they call it the Bermuda Triangle right now.
Yeah, it's not good. The football tends to do weird things once they get there.
The Browns are 5-6 now. They've got 4 games against the division opponents, including 2 at the Bengals, who we haven't even seen yet. So much is still out there for this football team, despite how crazy the season has gone, despite how, as Jimmy pointed out, how close they came to having it all unravel against Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yet here we are. I mean, we're going to be looking into the month of December when the Browns play on Sunday, and it's still out there for them if they keep winning.
Meaningful football games. That's
Absolutely.
what for 10 years. That's what Joe Thomas talked about doing, was playing meaningful games in December. Fortunately, Joe's not with the team anymore, but they've finally found a way to get to that point where the end of the season matters, not for the role of spoiler, but for very much their own playoff hopes. Mm-hmm. This is a newer feeling for us. I think we got a little bit of it last year. Realistically, we knew that they were sledding uphill and they had quite the road to go down if they wanted to get into the postseason. But it's very much in their hands right now. If they handle their business, maybe get a couple of games here and there to work out in their favor in terms of help with other teams losing. I mean, it's very possible that this team could find its way in.
Yeah, I think Jimmy called this game against Pittsburgh, it's like a knockout game.
Yep. Very much so.
Somebody's playoff hopes are going to get basically thrown away after this week.
Yeah, I think if it were the Steelers, they would fall to 6-6. They would realistically probably be out of it, but they would still be very much mathematically alive. And if the Browns were able to win, they would be 6-6 and very much mathematically alive. So you kind of look at it, and it is a knockout type situation for both teams. But I think if the Steelers were to lose, they might still be able to recover over the last month of the season. The Browns would be further behind the 8 ball, and I don't know that they'd have enough time.
Yeah, I mean, a seventh loss at this point
is almost crippling for a playoff hope.
Especially in early December.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing when they play the Ravens, we'll see, but that's still to come. I asked Jimmy about this. Was the last thing I asked him about. As fans, we're always quick to rip the coach when they lose and when they have a 4-game losing streak, but they've won 3 in a row, and yes, they were all home games, and you're supposed to win at home,
which they hadn't done earlier in the year. They started 0-3 at home this year.
Yeah, now 3-3. I mean, This is nice. But with everything that had happened with the Pittsburgh game, I think Freddie Kitchens deserves some credit. I mean, had them ready to go against Miami, against the team they were supposed to beat, and they did what they needed to do.
The most telling part of it was the fact that they knew they were supposed to beat the Dolphins based on records, and they came out and they didn't act like it.
Right.
They were focused, they were efficient, they were effective. They moved the ball down the field and put it in the end zone. They were, I think, 3 for 4 of their on red zone touchdown drives last night, meaning they scored 3 times in their first 4 red zone trips. And anytime you're having that kind of efficiency, and that's going to put you in very good position to win games.
Right. I mean, and you sit there and you go, wow, this is. As I'm watching the game, you wait for the other shoe to drop. I'm like, it's not right now. It's not dropping. And you put up a 28-0 lead. I mean, we're not used to seeing that where a Browns team comes out as the superior team and smacks the opponent right away.
Yeah, it's in the last 12 years. There's probably been a handful of times that you could say that, and just where the Browns were the superior team and they acted like it and they played like it. And they didn't just show up and expect to win. They actually worked to win the game. Maybe that 2-6 start finally got through to these guys that, hey, we're a heck of a lot better than we're showing right now. And we have to step it up because this season we all said could be very special, and it's about to come off the rails here if we're not careful.
Yeah, and now it's feels like it has a shot really it's been resurrected. I mean, we'll see. Time will tell, but it feels like that. The defense, considering the injuries and everything, did what they needed to do yesterday.
Yeah.
Joe Schobert is really on a tear right now.
Yeah, his agent has to be very happy right now because this is the best negotiation that Joe Schobert could have done for himself. For the first 3+ years of his career, fairly or unfairly, he got the knock that he was just a guy. He didn't make a lot of impact plays. Mm-hmm. He was there to make tackles, and he made a lot of them, including league-leading total a couple of years ago. But he was never a guy that was going to make game-changing plays. I don't know. I would say 4 interceptions in 2 weeks would be considered game-changing plays. And he realistically could have been in line for Defensive Player of the Week last week with 2 picks, 10 tackles, a sack, couple tackles for lost yardage. I mean, he's been playing on an absolute tear right now, and he's playing like a guy that wants to get paid.
Right, and that's the way it's supposed to be. You know what? Yeah. Instead of just saying pay the man, it's I'm going to go out there and I'm not going to give you any choice. I'm going to make you look at what I'm doing here and make you understand my value one way or the other.
Yep, and that's a good thing. Yesterday was the perfect example of everything you want from a contract situation. They have a guy in a contract year in Joe Schobert, continues to play his tail off. They have guys that are big money guys. Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Baker Mayfield is going to be a big money guy at some point in the very near future. They all made plays, and they all stepped up. And then you look at Nick Chubb, same thing. He's going to be due a contract extension in the not-too-distant future. And the way he's playing, it's pretty hard to argue that he's not one of the best in the league at running the football. And then Kareem Hunt is on that 1 year, half-year prove-it deal as it turned out with the suspension. But he's playing his tail off because he knows that if he has a good run and helps maybe get the Browns to the playoffs, whether it's here or with another team, he's going to get paid too.
I love the way Chubb and Hunt have embraced being together, and whereas we see it all the time where it's like you're taking my carries away and you're taking my reps away and everything. I mean, they're blocking for each other. Chubb, I kept thinking when I saw Chubb had a couple of those receptions yesterday, I'm like, man, that's Hunt rubbing off on him. Yeah. And the unselfishness has led to, I think it's a weapon that I still think can be exploited a little bit more by the Browns. But you see what's there and what could be there here in these last 5 weeks.
It really is pretty special, the tandem that they have. For many years, they like to talk about how good Duke Johnson was in pass situations, but when he was on the field, you knew what was coming. Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb can do everything on the football field and really keep the defense guessing. And then when you put them both out there, it's unbelievable. And you have Hunt being a lead blocker for Chubb. You've had Chubb being a lead blocker for Hunt. And the way that those guys run hard with the ball, I would not want to step in front of them when they don't. Their sole responsibility is to knock me out of the way. Now, forget about carrying and protecting the ball. They're there to block and clear space, and they're very good at it, and they run hard. I've never seen a player work as hard in practice as Nick Chubb has, and I think I've said that probably 150 times since the start of training camp. But the hard work that guy puts in has paid off so much, and next year and the year after that, if he continues to go on his current trajectory, he's going to be a very well compensated back for a long time.
And he'll have deserved it.
And he'll have earned it.
The AFC's leading rusher, and you just sit there and you go, and you have Kareem Hunt right next to him.
Yeah.
It's pretty special. All right, my friend, I appreciate it. You and Ben Axelrod will be generating plenty of content today off this one at WKYC.com.
Yes, sir.
Now, is it press conference day or is it just conference call?
I haven't seen the email come through yet.
Conference call day. Okay. So, yeah,
that's good.
You stay put today.
All right.
All right. All right. We'll certainly have a lot more, though, between now and Sunday when the Browns get ready to play the Steelers.
Yep, and we'll be in Pittsburgh, full coverage of that game. Bud Shaw, Ben Axelrod, and myself will be making the 2-hour trek to that city that we don't like to talk about very much, and we'll be there for a game, and hopefully, for the first time in my career, it'll be a happy car trip home.
Let's hope. My goodness.
I've been waiting for a very long time for this, as we all have.
What are we on? This is 16 years, right?
Since
03.
Yeah, they have not played well. I mean, this is a historical thing going back to even the Cardiac Kids days. Playing in Pittsburgh has been very difficult.
Yeah.
And
they had lost 16 in a row at Three Rivers before Bernie Kosar broke the streak in '86.
Yeah, and it's been I don't know if it's been before Ben Roethlisberger, but it very well might have been like his first year or the year before they got him.
I think
the
it was the year before
in Pittsburgh.
I think it was the year before they got him. I think it was the year after the playoff, 03, the year after they won. They had lost to Pittsburgh in the playoff. They went back there on a Sunday night, and Tim Couch. It was one of Tim Couch's last
That was the game
great
that
moments.
Joey Porter lost his mind in when he was mic'd up for the game, and Tim Couch ran for a touchdown in that game.
Yes.
And Joey Porter's not so safe for work description of that play is one of the funniest things that Browns fans could ever see.
Yeah. Google it.
So yeah, it's been a long time. A lot of angry bus rides home. And I remember Josh Cribbs when he played for the team. He would always say, he's like, I want one damn good bus trip from Pittsburgh. He never got one, but he relished the fact that he sent Pittsburgh home a couple times on an unhappy bus ride.
Yes.
Now you have an opportunity to sweep the Steelers, and it's unfathomable to me that we're at this point and that we feel like we're the better team going into this game.
I know. It's pretty mind-blowing.
It's nice.
Yeah, it is nice. But now you got to go win.
Yep.
You got to go win. My friend, as always, I appreciate it.
Sounds good, Dino.
Matt Florjancic, 3 News sports digital reporter, joining us here on After Further Review. The Browns beat the Dolphins on Sunday 41-24. They've won 3 in a row heading into Sunday's game with Pittsburgh. Jarvis Landry is still going to be your winner here on the After Further Review Twitter poll question, getting the game ball from Sunday, and why not? He was unbelievable yesterday, and he really, as the Browns have kind of been on this run these last 3 weeks, Jarvis has played very, very well. And I mean, Baker's looked to him early, he's looked to him often, and Landry certainly has risen to the occasion. Okay, that will do it for us here on After Further Review. Again, much more coming up here today at WKYC.com from Matt and Ben Axelrod, as they will put together a bunch of reaction pieces. And then make sure you're watching later on tonight Jim Donovan on What Matters Most, and then at 7 on the front row. Plenty of Browns content for you. Okay, that'll do it for us. Thanks for watching, everyone. For Brian Crane, Matt Florjancic, and Jim Donovan, I'm Dave DeNatale. This has been After Further Review right here on WKYC.com and also on Facebook Live and YouTube.